everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Rumcast. I'm John Gulla. Here with me is Will Hookinga, and together with you as the listener, we make a perfect trinity of rum lovers where we get to talk through all things rum-related with the people who love and shape it. On today's episode, we relish the opportunity to talk with a man who has been an absolute staple in the rum industry for literally decades in Trinidad since, well, I guess, Will, since you and I were born. So
I think since you were born, he predates me. I know we talked about the early 80s a little bit, and he was gracious enough to say you guys probably weren't born, and I cut in. I said, I think John was born because I didn't arrive on the scene until 88. So, but yeah, please continue.
You just had to distinguish that I was that much older than you, didn't you?
Hey, I did. I just, I grew another year older earlier this week, as you know. So I'm just trying to do anything I can grasp onto to remind myself that sometimes I'm the younger person in the room at this point in my life. I'm going to seize that opportunity.
Well, happy belated birthday, and you're 1 year closer to me.
Thank you.
So it was an interesting conversation. Of course, we're talking about former master distiller for Angostura and TDL, Trinidad Distillers Ltd, Mr. John Georges. But before we get to that interview, Will, you and I were talking about something over text a little earlier that I thought was kind of interesting, especially because you had an opposite kind of viewpoint from me on it. And that was, we had both seen an advertisement online for a rum-related type adventure, and we both immediately recognized it really missed the mark. So, like blatantly wrong information, and you just, it felt off and like dirty. And I was remarking to you, like, are enthusiasts of other spirit categories subjected to the same level of bullcrap that rum is? It just seems predatory, I guess, that people are taking advantage of the lack of good education and information for rum that's out there. And so my thought was, like, other spirits like bourbon and scotch, they may not have the amount of, like, I don't know, that corruption is the right word.
Leeches?
Yeah, because their fan bases, I feel like, wouldn't stand for it. So, that was my thought, but then you had the opposite answer.
Yeah, I took it the opposite direction. I said, basically, the more popular the spirit, probably the more bullshit there is, right? Just because there's a larger market of bourbon drinkers. There's a larger market of tequila drinkers out there. And so to me, my theory is that just, there's probably a hefty volume of really great things as well to serve those enthusiasts. And there are great things in the rum world, I think, to serve our rum enthusiasts that we have here in our little corner of the spirits universe. But yeah, I just think the more money, the more people out there spending money on it there is, the more likely you're going to have the hucksters, as they say, out there,
I guess you're right. It felt so blatant in this case that I was like, who is buying this? And I just can't imagine. But then again, I have to remember, we have to bring it back to something we talk about a lot. We're like the 1%ers in the rum universe. And, I don't mean that in terms of, I just mean like we know more than the average person would. And we can see that stuff. And we have to recall and remember there are plenty of people out there, even who are rum related or rum, enthusiasts in a way, or like to drink rum, that don't have that same level of information and may not even want it. I don't know. But
I think for certain rum related adventures, experiences out there and things of that, like, even if you're not necessarily an enthusiast, you're just someone who kind of like likes to party in tropical environments, that you can kind of go along for the ride. And if you're getting to experience cool tropical settings, like, you don't, the rum is just kind of a thing. It's like, I'm, on a beach in the Caribbean drinking rum, it doesn't have to be.
Every rum tastes better out there, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 100%, an accurate experience or the best of the best type stuff. So yeah, rum has that interesting kind of vacation component to it that I think other spirits categories don't always have. But on the note of rum experiences, we got an interesting question, I thought, in the Rumcast patrons Discord community about rum tastings. So one of the people in the Discord, Implar is his name, he said, along with some friends, I recently started a rum club. Always love to see that.
Yep.
And we've had 2 tastings so far, an intro to rum and one focused on Family Ricci, which is actually an independent bottler out of Europe that I recently learned about on a Rumcast Happy Hour, courtesy of Richard Nicholson, was talking about. They do all sorts of like crazy blends and stuff. If you just go to their website, it's the amount of like original blends, stuff I wouldn't have thought of is quite astounding. I still haven't had any of their stuff yet, but I'm interested. Anyway, so those were the first 2 tastings, Intro to Rum and Family Ricci. They also are planning to do a quote unquote bang for your buck tasting, which I'm guessing what that is value buys basically. And he asked any ideas for a theme for a 4th one. He did note, I can't go full agricole. He says, I was thinking a single cask lineup, but if somebody has a theme that's a bit more available, that would be nice. And he notes that he's located in Belgium, so their choices tend to be a bit wider than the U.S.
Okay.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Twist the knife a little bit, why don't you? Anyway, the first place that my mind went for that was to zoom in on, do a single country zoom in, on a particular country for the 4th tasting. And I think when I think single country tasting, well, I'll ask you, if someone posed the idea of a single country rum tasting as sort of the beginnings of a rum club, what country would come to mind first for you for that type of tasting? Don't think about it, just say it.
Jamaica.
Okay, yeah, we're in agreement then.
Okay.
I think the 2 kind of intro-y countries that always come to mind for me for an enthusiast group like this are Barbados and Jamaica.
Yep.
And I think both are great. I think Jamaica has a little bit more range between the distilleries on the island, and also kind of maybe a breadth of brands that are available internationally. You can go between
right.
Appleton, Clarendon, Long Pond, Worthy Park, Hamden, New Yarmouth. Like there's a lot of stuff to choose from. So that was my suggestion. But then I also just started thinking, and I think at some point in the history of the podcast we've talked about this before. Ideal kind of rum flights, rum tastings to go through. But I was like, I'm just gonna scribble some out and think of ideas for these and kind of see what comes out. So I scribbled down a few more, but I'm curious if there's anything else that comes to mind for you. The first thing that came to mind for me was the single country zoom in, and Jamaica was the natural extension of that. Is there anything else that comes to mind for you, John?
I kind of want to take it the opposite direction, funny enough. And what I mean by that is I do think there is a place for the kind of single country type of flight. Absolutely, that makes sense. But it depends on who you're doing this for.
Yeah.
And like, you said, this is a series. So when you're doing like a series, I think you have more freedom to dive deep into one specific area. Whereas I happen to be, bringing some people over this weekend that I'm going to give some rum to as a tasting. And they know, some rums, but maybe they're not quite as familiar or enthusiast as other people are.
What's the, on the scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is know nothing about rum and 10 is listener of this podcast? And not just because they know John Gulla, like actual listener. Where are they on that spectrum?
I would say probably a 5 or a 6.
Oh, okay. So we've got something to work with here. This is okay.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking?
These are people that I think are probably familiar with other spirit categories to some level, but aren't enthusiasts of those spirit categories, if that makes sense either. So they're not novice drinkers. They're not like, oh yeah, we have a cocktail or something once in a while. They're more than that, but not really getting into the specifics.
I feel it.
From that standpoint, what I want to do and what I always try to do is broaden the range of what I'm offering. But we've talked about this before, how I often fail at this because I tend to put out what I like. And so this time I'm taking a different strategy. And I'm not going high ABV. I'm not going to try to blow people's minds initially or anything with like, wow, this is, I'm going to go with something that's a little bit more approachable. Yep. Like you said, maybe one Barbados offering that I think is a good offering. Doesn't have to be super high ABV. Can be 43, 45% ABV. Something from a Jamaica that might have a little funk, maybe an Appleton, right? Not, again, blowing people out of the water, but see where they're gravitating towards and then adapt on the fly to see what else I would have that I could take the next step.
The adjustable rum tasting.
Yes.
It's a dynamic rum tasting. I like
Dynamic
it.
rum tasting. That is it. You just nailed it. Yes.
It's a choose your own adventure rum tasting. I
love
this
it.
this is great.
That's exactly where I want to go with it. So, and these are people, this is their second time coming. So this is not the first time. I just kind of threw a bunch of stuff at them and we had a good time, but it wasn't really the focus of the visit. This time we're going to make it like they all said, hey, we want to try more stuff. We want to get more into it. Yeah. So now I get to focus on this.
You know what you need to do? You almost need to make like a flow chart for this, right? I feel like you have two rums at the beginning. So you were just saying, like a 40 to 45% ABV Barbados and something similar in the Jamaica category.
Right.
I think that's a great way to start. So you start and you taste them on those, and it's like, which one did you prefer? And then based on that answer, you flow into a new set of choices based on that, and you just keep going and you keep going down the rabbit hole until you've realized you've gone too far, and then you can pull back and kind of go off in a different direction. So, perhaps if they like the Appleton offering, the next choice, the next deeper choice would be the Worthy Park. Is Reserve? I always forget the name of like the like medium age
single estate.
Yeah, the single exactly. There's like two of those bottlings, and one is really expensive and like 12 years, and one is like a blend of 5 to 8 or something like that. You start them on that lower one that, it's got a little bit more of that banana coming through in there, but it's still, it's WPL mark. It's really pleasing. So maybe you go down there, and if they like that, then I don't know, maybe you
step them up.
You don't want to just keep going down the Jamaica rabbit hole, but maybe you branch off to kind of like a funky St. Lucia or something like that. I don't know, kind of bring in something interesting there.
I think you're onto something. I don't know if I would want to stay with the Jamaica line there, because you could certainly just flow right into Hampton and
true.
Some of those, or if you go to something else, because there's points both for and against. I could see we can make a whole show episode about this. So
I think we need to make the flow chart,
Yes.
the dynamic rum tasting flow chart.
That feels like a whole new episode. So I'm with you, and I'm going to work on it. And I'll tell you what, let's come back to that. Yeah.
Okay, you do some experimenting this weekend with actual live subjects. Yeah.
Yes.
Evil
I'm
laugh.
excited for it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm really looking forward to hearing about that. But in the meantime, we have a really interesting interview to get to with John Georges, as you introduced earlier. Over 40 years experience working at Angostura or Trinidad Distillers Ltd. We get into some of the distinction between those two things, but basically he was distilling the rum that ends up going into the Angostura products, and also that sometimes ends up in the lovely independent bottlings of Trinidad Distillers Ltd. distillate that end up on the market out there. We talk a lot about I mean, anytime you get someone who spent 40-something years in rum, it's really interesting just to get little snapshots from throughout their career of what rum was like, because this is really someone who was on the ground floor of rum, because I mean, it's funny, the way we talk about rum now, we're still talking about like, rum not quite having its moment or whatever, but even where rum is now is like, there was a huge sea change from what it was in like the 80s and before that, and John was there to see it all, and being part of a company that tried to, and is still trying, I think, to kind of make people look at rum a little bit differently. And so it's really interesting to hear all that. We also kind of more broadly get into some other Trinidad rum stuff. We can't talk about Trinidad rum without talking about Caroni and, what may or may not have ended up in Angostura bottles over the years. I know that's always an interesting topic of conversation. So we talk about a lot of stuff, and it was a really interesting, deep dive.
I think when Sade wrote the song Smooth Operator, I think she must have wrote it about John Georges, because that's how I feel about him. And it's like, he's just super smooth. Not only his voice is smooth, but also his answers and like, how he's coming. I loved talking a little bit about Angostura bitters as well, actually. So that was a fun piece of it and how that all fits into the story. Perfect. Exactly. So I'm, as always, whenever we do these, we're excited for people to hear the conversation, but this is a special special one in terms of the historical element of all of the experience that he had, and that's a great thing and viewpoint for us to dig into. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we even got into added sugar questions about Angostura, and he spoke about those at length, and I think some people out there will be nodding along. I think some people out there will be like, what? No,
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting perspective from someone who's worked in rum for a really long time, grew up in Trinidad, and I'm glad to have it on the show.
So let's just cut over to our sponsor for this episode, and I'll see you on the other side.
All right.
Hey rum fans, we may spend most of our time talking about rum here, but we also have a lot of love for other cane juice spirit categories as well, including cachaça. That's why we want to let you know about a new, high-quality cachaça recently made available in the U.S. market, Nossa. Nossa is a single estate cachaça from the rolling hills of the Minas Gerais region of Brazil, the cultural heartland of artisanal cachaça production. The cane juice is pressed on the same day it's hand cut, single distilled on site using a copper pot still, then rested in stainless steel before aging for a minimum of 24 months in first use Amburana barrels that are native to Brazil. Now, I'm willing to bet that most of you are well aware of getting your hands on a good, no additives, 100% pure cane cachaça product here in the States, particularly those aged in Brazilian wood, can be really difficult. So we're excited to help spread the word that Nossa is now available for purchase online and can be shipped to just under 40 states. If you're newer to cachaça, Nossa serves as a great entry point to the wonderfully diverse realm of small batch cachaças in the Minas region. If you're more familiar with cachaça, you're going to love the vivid nose full of cinnamon and honey notes and the great balance of sweet and spice it brings on the palate. It reminds me a lot of the crumble topping on a Dutch apple pie. To learn more or to grab a bottle of your own, head on over to nossacachaça.com. That's www.nossacachaca.com and snag 10% off your order using the code RUMCAST. Oh, and don't forget to follow Nossa on Instagram for drink recipes, pictures of the fazenda, and a bunch more. Now back to the show.
All right, we are here with John Georges, former master distiller of Angostura, maker of many fine Trinidad rums over the course of multiple decades. John, I know you retired. Was it 2019 that you retired? Was that the year?
Formally 2019, at the end of May 2019.
The formal retirement came in 2019, but I know you're still out there doing some things since then. Well, we were just kind of getting into it a little bit. I know you're off on a plane tomorrow morning on rum business, I believe. But what is the day in the life of a retired master distiller? What does one do?
Well, the trick about it, and this is the name of the game. There's still so much education to be done around rum. People, it's just quite amazing, not just in Trinidad, globally. And a big part of marketing, particularly if you're marketing a premium rum, is really to, first of all, get people to taste it. And when they're tasting it, they need some amount of guidance, in my opinion. Some of the better known spirits get away with, I don't know, just the so many years of brainwashing.
There's years of brainwashing to undo, right? Yeah.
They just assumed whether they know anything about it. They say, oh, that has to be good, or what have you. When it comes to rum, you really need to sort of bring them around. So locally, I think even locally in Trinidad, the concept of a premium rum is still in its very nascent incipient stages. Mm-hmm. And globally, Angostura, obviously, best known for Angostura bitters, needs to first of all sort of make the connection between the two, perhaps.
Right.
And sort of explain that Angostura does have a very long and extensive rum history.
Right.
And then, what makes Angostura rum, and what makes it special, in my opinion. Yeah, we have a lot of work to be done. Yeah. And, well, if I can, both at home and abroad, I try to do that.
And speaking of that, actually, I think setting the stage, to your point, a lot of our listeners know that TDL, Trinidad Distillers Ltd, is the only now remaining distillery on the islands of Trinidad and Tobago. But I don't think there's as many people, to your point, that are clear about the relationship of Angostura to TDL. So maybe we can start there, and that will, I assume, lead into the bitters conversation as well. But can you tell us a little bit about Angostura and the distillery itself and how that developed or changed? And Will, you buried this, but John, you were there for 40 years, right? So literally 40 years. So you would probably be one of the best people on earth to tell us, how did that change during your time there?
I'm not the best person on earth, but I'm the one you can get to.
You're the one we have.
We'll take it.
I'm excited to have you here.
I'm all you've got. There's some guys out there who, I sort of bridge the gap, if you will, from a purely technical point of view, and also a sort of a perspective on Angostura Rum.
Yeah.
This I was very fortunate to be part of, which was, in my opinion, a sort of a re-entry of Angostura Rum into international markets in a big way. We flourished quite well in Trinidad, and also while we made a lot of rum for Bacardi, but Trinidad and Tobago rums on international markets, well, it used to be, but then it sort of went dormant, and now we're back with a particular perspective, and getting that perspective out there and trying to, there are lots of rums.
There are a lot of rums out there. Even John and I keep finding new ones every week.
And it could be my imagination, but really, since we in the Caribbean in particular sort of relaunched the whole rum dynamic from a different perspective, in my opinion, the different perspective was, this is great premium product. These are wonderful artisanal beverages that everyone should really be enjoying. Notwithstanding the fact that rum is out there under different, you hardly know it's rum, but when it comes to rum,
capital R rum, right?
we're in the Caribbean. We think we're it.
Of course,
we are it. Of course, wherever there's cane, there's sugar cane, there'll be rum. But the really good stuff, the really stuff with proper heritage, some degree of respect comes from the Caribbean. Anyhow, you were wondering about TDL.
Yes.
Well, this really gets to the heart of Angostura as far as Angostura rum is concerned, in that the real Angostura obviously began in Venezuela, and raw rum was what was used to extract the flavors from the secret recipe to create bitters. And in Venezuela, I suppose, I've seen notes that Dr. Seeger had his own alambiquero who would make his rum for him and so on. But I don't know that rum was the alcohol. Moved to Trinidad. The old man died in Venezuela. His sons brought the business to Trinidad. And in Trinidad, they did not have their own distiller. So they were buying spirits from those in Trinidad who were already making spirit.
Right.
And that was to make bitters. Carlos Seegert is credited with, the whole idea that we need to do more than just bitters. And we're already getting rum. Well, clearly, bitters is hugely popular. It suggests we know about aromas, flavors, and that sort of thing. Why don't we get into rum? And to be honest, the first rum perhaps contained some of the elements of bitters, in that they recognized this would be a sort of a cocktail product regardless. So along with that first rum, which I suspect would, under common, regular definition, would have to be a spiced rum. They also created a product called Curriton, which would be another sort of cocktail mixer, and it was a citrus-based cocktail mixer. So those were the two entries formally into the realm of beverage alcohol. And they continued. This probably was in the early 1880s. And over time, they continued this experimenting, and they went from spiced rums to what would we would consider regular rums. Seagutt's Bouquet was an early entrant. There were other brands, Silver Circle, Red Circle, all sorts of things. And these were just rums that they continued to try over time. Now, Angostura, modest success, to put it mildly, but Robert Seagutt, a grandson of the old man, he decided to take the bull by the horns, and not only, and for him that meant controlling the process in a more formal manner. Mm-hmm. He was an educated chemist and clearly a businessman at heart. So he was bringing these two talents and strengths to bear on the company, and fought tooth and nail for Angostura to build their first distillery. And this was 1947-ish. And together with people who were around him at the time, Robert Seagutt was the chief executive officer or managing director, whatever they called it. There was a gentleman called A.C. I'm not sure what the A.C. meant, but A.C. Gomez and Thomas Gatliff, a chemist. And between these three gentlemen, Mr. Gomez built the distillery. Mr. Gatliff worked, from my understanding, on assisting him in that area, plus the blending. And the goal here was to make certain decisions about Angostura rum. Because, making rum, there are all sorts of things you have to decide. Yeah. What are you going to start with as a raw material? How are you going to distill it? How are you going to age it? How are you going to blend it? And making some of these decisions really set the direction, set the fundamental DNA of your product. That's when Mr. Seagutt, Robert Seagutt, decided that would be a separate entity that would be responsible for manufacturing all the alcohol for Angostura bitters and rum. TDL was created for that purpose. Now, that's a purely business decision that you needed a company, Trinidad Distillers Ltd, separate and apart from Angostura, for the purposes of making alcohol. And the way it's structured, a TDL actually sells the spirit to the marketing organizations. And that's purely a business thing. I wouldn't fully understand all of that, but I know that was when a TDL was created, also sometime around 1947.
The important thing for us to remember is that, a lot of times people listening will see a rum from an independent bottler or something that says TDL. And the thing to remember is it's not Angostura rum in the sense that it is a blend that Angostura has created, but it comes from the distillery that produces Angostura rum. Is that a good way of putting it?
That's the way of putting it. That's okay. How we would see it.
Okay.
And perhaps way back then, that was the idea. You're not going to put Angostura on it, put TDL, because we're making alcohol. Mm-hmm. And you didn't want the two being confused out in the marketplace.
Well, and before we get because we're going to talk about the rum here, but before we get too far into this, you've already mentioned the bitters a couple of times, and I had to bring something up that I thought was super interesting that I found and ask you about it. So you mentioned that Angostura TDL was created, right, to help provide the alcohol to create the bitters. Mm-hmm. And so I know better than to ask you for the recipe, obviously, for the bitters here, of course, but I looked it up online just to see what people are thinking about with recipes with it, and not a single one that I could find used rum or a cane juice spirit, or I should say a cane-based spirit, as the alcohol to make their own bitters at home. Not one. It was all grain alcohol and other things. And I thought, wow, what a miss there, because, it doesn't take a whole lot of research to think about that and think through why that might be, not correct. So I just wanted to kind of confirm if I can't ask you for the recipe, but can I ask you, has the recipe for the bitters changed over time? Were you involved in that at all? Clearly, you're making the rum, so how did that kind of work together with the bitters that were being created over all these years?
The recipe for bitters has not changed. It is a couple of things. Bitters is it's an extraordinary. I'm going to say it here just once. Bitters is perfect, and it is that unique and very special blend of botanicals and spices and so on, that which are the important ingredients are leached or through alcohol. Mm-hmm. And here you are. Okay, the one thing that you know is in there because it's on the bottle is gentian, which is really the medicine. And that's the medical part of it. The rest is to sort of mask the bitterness up to a point and to provide that aromatic quality. As we all know, aroma is a significant component in any sort of flavor. And just by smelling something, you will want to eat it. And part of being able to recover from the ailments, which is supposed to help you with, is the restoration of your revival of your appetite. And so the aroma is part of the appetite enhancing or encouraging part, and the flavor is so that you'll actually want to enjoy it. And there you go.
That's why I'm always getting hungry. I never knew it was responsible for producing that effect on the appetite.
Sneak in the medicine with it. But using cane sugar, I'm not sure for your raw rum for your base, whether that contributes anything to the overall efficacy of the product or a splendid perfection of the product. I would not know. To my knowledge, we have never used anything other than a cane-based spirit and perhaps more specifically, molasses-based spirit, which may or may not have an effect. I would not know. That said, it is generally accepted that the components that make up bitters provide such a strong flavor and aroma element that whatever comes with the spirit is quickly overpowered and of no real consequence to the end. The rum that we use to make bitters is a wonderful product, but it's definitely a light rum rather than a heavy rum. So not chock full of congeners.
Oh, that makes total sense. I mean, you're trying for something that's going to be the base of all of the aromatics that you're adding to it. So there's no sense in putting a good quality, rum or molasses-based spirit there.
There is no real point. That said, now I would imagine most people, particularly north of the equator, would find it far easier to get a grain-based spirit. And if you're up north and you're trying to make something, grain-based spirits are all over. Not so much a molasses-based spirit.
Mm-hmm. Right. That makes sense. I wanna back up a little bit because we talked about 40 plus years at Angostura. I'm interested in what were kind of your earliest encounters with rum growing up in Trinidad, and at what point did you consider it as a career path? How does one, set on the path to becoming a master distiller?
First of all, you've got to be really, really very lucky. And
right place, right time.
Right place, right time, and the unfortunate, as the old saying goes, the circle of life. This is Trinidad, and Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad in particular, we have always been a sort of an oil and gas based country. That's what really put us on the map. And as a young chemical engineer, you are thinking, when you think refining, you're thinking oil. When you're thinking distilling, you're thinking oil. That's what you're thinking. And to be honest, I don't know, but in my youth, I drank a lot of beer. Not a hell of a lot of rum. And even though my father made a really mean rum punch, it was way too mean for me. So I really wasn't that big into rum at all. And, my first sort of excursions into liquor as such probably were some inexpensive scotch, because in Trinidad, people still, sort of revered scotch. Right. Scotch is aspirational drink.
That goes back to exactly what you were saying earlier about, rum as a premium spirit is still a work in progress, even where it's made.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress, even where it's made.
Yeah.
And I could go on, so I'll avoid that.
This is the place to go on, by the way. Don't worry about talking too much.
Well, no, we can always do a part 2 later.
In Trinidad, in particular, you've got a country where I don't know, there are so many different people, and it's an aspirational thing to drink a cognac or a scotch And this doesn't even have to be a good Scotch. It's just Scotch.
Right.
Because,
It's got that brand recognition. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Everything you've ever heard says this is the stuff that then you go for it. But I had my sister's father-in-law. He was the first guy that sort of introduced me to the concept of a premium rum. I was the ripe old age of 17 or something like that.
Wow.
He lived in St. Kitts, and he was into Babancourt. So he had a Babancourt 15-year-old, a Babancourt 15-year-old, or was it 30? One of these really old Babancourts. And you take a little sip of this stuff and it just vanishes, and you have no clue what you're dealing with. And he's waxing lyrical about this stuff. And it's for him, it's everything. The first person who really sort of told me that here's something, this is great spirit. On that same little vacation, we were in St. Kitts, another island. And the rum, there were a few rums there, but the rum that I drank again on that particular trip was a rum from Antigua, Cavalier. And I never think about it, but there you go. I had a very decent time, and not too much, but it was my first honest introduction to rum. I didn't know it at the time at both ends. An extraordinary Babancourt and a sort of a regular drinking rum out of Antigua. That wasn't so bad.
Right.
Wasn't so bad. But, I come back to Trinidad and I'm not really drinking rum. I still drink mostly beer. And I'm going to the university to study chemical engineering because, if you don't want to be building buildings or you don't think electricity is for you, you end up as a chemical engineer,
Well, yeah, I still don't think electricity is for me. If there's ever an electric issue in my house, that's the limit of my home repair skill set. So yeah.
Same.
So you end up as a chemical engineer, and you discovered that chemical engineers can do it all. In the end, chemical engineers have to do it all.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. A little bit of everything. And even the mechanical engineers eventually have to be subjected to our whims and fancies. Why would they make any of the crap they made if it wasn't for helping us make rum?
Well, my next question was going to be chemical versus mechanical, which is better, but I think you already answered it. So
yeah, come on, they can't do anything. They can't make anything. They have no purpose until we give them one.
That's what I've always said. So yeah, I'm glad we agree.
Yeah, no, come on. We found the other great use for that wonderful micro yeast.
That's right.
Bread and alcohol. Come on.
What more do you need?
What more do you need?
I love the story because it's like, sometimes you find the rum and then sometimes the rum finds you. And it feels like you leaned towards that.
Well, this is it. So I'm studying chemical engineering, and one of the industry visits that I get to make is to Angostura. Because it's got everything that you study at school. Chemical engineering is just the three fundamentals: heat, mass, and momentum transfer. It's not that complicated. And here in this one thing, we have it all. And it's quite fascinating. We've got a wonderful fermentation takes place. And then you've got distillation, and then you've got cooling towers, heat exchangers. They're all there in one spot. And, my class at university wasn't large. I don't know, maybe 15 of us. Mm-hmm. And the other island, which you would want to have chemical engineers, believe it or not, was Jamaicans. So my class at the University of the West Indies, you get students from all of the other English-speaking islands. Mm-hmm. So Barbadians, Jamaicans, Trinidadians. And the class was split more or less half between Trinidadians and Jamaicans. Anywho, you get to Angostura, and of course, this is year 2, I think, and everyone was thinking, do you need chemical engineers? They say, we've got one and that's enough, because this is not a large distillery. This is, it's not massive. It's a large distillery. You say, bummer. That means we're heading to the central of the island where we've got massive oil refineries, and just around picking up gas processing. In my early years, it was so long ago. The gas processing industry hadn't picked up. Gas processing being primarily ammonia manufacture and urea manufacture, because natural gas is, well, the basic raw material and energy source for both of those processes. They hadn't quite yet developed. And a few other chemical type things were being mooted at the time. So we thought, yeah, not to worry, we'll be okay. We'll get jobs involved in that. And any energy intensive business also was attracted to that, because we had natural gas, which made it an effective, a useful tool for driving, in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, cement manufacturing. And for a long time, the smelting of aluminum was also, or aluminium, depending on where you're from. What do Americans say?
We say aluminum. Yeah.
Aluminum. Okay, well,
we're an aluminum country.
We British say aluminium.
That sounds more elegant, I think.
It's also closer to the Latin root. So yeah, you're more correct.
Anyhow, and that's what happens in Jamaica at the time. Bauxite was big in Jamaica, and on and on it goes. Anyhow, the gentleman who took us on the tour was a chap called Ronnie Leanos, who was, quite the character. And he invited us up to a place called the Oak Room. And we, sat and chatted with him and everything, and it's all good. I go back, I complete my degree, and it's kind of tough. Oil prices are in a bit of a slump. Nothing's really happening. I apply for several jobs in the oil and gas thing and come up second and third every time, until I see an advertisement for a factory manager at Angostura.
Ooh.
Hey, what the heck? I can do that.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? I can do that. Silly enough to think I could do it. And I apply, and I'm sure there are a lot of people. And I have my ideas of how I managed to get the job, but not for this forum. But I got the job. And how did I get the job? Good old Mr. Leanos passed away. The same guy who took us on the tour passed away. Such is life, the circle of life.
Yeah. Circle of life.
And there was another guy who was already, ready to take his job, and he sort of jumped in and took Mr. Leanos's job, but they didn't replace him.
Right.
And it took a while to get around to doing that. And shock of all shocks, they picked me. Shock of all shock, they picked me. And, it was brilliant. Why? Because we won't go into the details. The best part, 20 minutes from home, going against the traffic. Going against the traffic. And if I survived the first 6 months, didn't get canned, I'd get a company car. Come on.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What was the company car?
Crappy Nissan at the time, but hey, better than what I had. No, not just a company car. This is a fully maintained company car.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Really great stuff. Nobody had that. And then, of course, it's tough. It's tough, but it's a family-run business. In those early days, there was a lot of. It wasn't hardcore. It wasn't rough.
Mm-hmm.
This harsh sort of corporate culture hadn't really stepped in, and in fact, it was that was everyone always spoke about the Angostura family, And if you read some of the sort of documents put out by Robert Siegert himself, he really took this approach, which was, you work for us, we'll work for you. We're all in this together. We're not here to, And in many cases, he encouraged family members, because if we know you and you're good, we are going to think your son or your brother is. So in Angostura, it was quite common to see families, fathers and sons, sisters, and so on, be part of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
It was clear that Mr. Siegert put a high value on loyalty, and he understood that retaining employees was important. You can't lose. In many cases, this is very early days. You got your training on the job, and once you train somebody, you loathe to lose them.
Right.
So I joined Angostura. It's everyone there, it's an unusual thing. Everyone I'm there, oh, how long are you here? 30 years? How long are you here? 20 years? And he's got a brother and he's got his son coming up into the business, and they just keep it going.
Yeah.
And that was the nature of the business. So you felt quite comfortable. Yeah, there was a little harsh word here and there, but you felt that you could, if you hung in there, you'd become part of the family.
Was this in the 80s?
Yeah, I joined Angostura in 82. Neither of you were born.
John, you were born in 82.
I was born. Nice of you to say there. I was probably still close to being in diapers, but I'll take it.
So you come in 82.
82, the so-called factory manager, yes.
As the so-called factory manager. So I'm imagining listeners picturing you walking into the distillery and suddenly getting to make all these decisions about rum making and styles of rum and things like that. I'm imagining it was a little different from that. Like, how much of the focus was there even on doing something different with rum at that point? Was it very much just like we make these products and this is it?
This is what we do. Okay, first of all, when I joined Angostura, Angostura had not too recently purchased Fernandez.
Okay.
Fernandez Distillers, the other distillery in Trinidad. Yeah. And when I joined, they had two operations going. Angostura, which was on the main road where it is now, has been since 1947. And the Fernandez Distillers, literally down the street, around the corner, on an industrial estate, was just there. And that's where I went to work.
Okay.
And to be honest, that's a fairly old distillery, and a freshly minted chemical engineer, and you come into this environment where hiring chemical engineers is a relatively new thing. The guy who was in front of me, a fellow called Peter Chinchong, who was at that time sort of aspiring to Mr. Leonis's job. He was a chemical engineer, but he had gone on to do biochemical engineering and all sorts of things. And he was a really smart guy, very determined. But you coming out of university and then getting into a work environment, two different things.
Yeah.
Now, everyone thinks you come out of university knowing stuff. You know nothing. You know nothing. You may have understood the theory of pumps and the theory of distillation, and the theory of how compressors work and controls work and everything, but actually seeing it in action and understanding that, yeah, sure, the pump works now, but there are 1,000 things that can crap up the whole thing. You need to know that. I'm sure the distillation is going fine now, but did you know that it gets really dirty really quickly? And every once in a while, you need to stop and clean it up. And the cooling tower was running, but did you know it got lots of bugs and gets nasty and needs to be cleaned up periodically. So my job was just to keep the noise going, keep the pumps running,
keep the noise
keep
going,
the cooling tower clean, you have to learn that part first. Forget about the details of how it smells or doesn't smell. Just let's keep it going for the foot. Let's keep it going. We don't want this compressor running, crapping out on us. So what does that mean? They were not going to hire a mechanical engineer and an electrical engineer. You had to figure out, you're a chemical engineer, for God's sake, you can do anything. Mechanical engineering is dead easy. You can do that. The mechanicals cannot do what you do. You can do everything they can.
We're going to get so many emails from mechanical engineers when this episode goes live.
If they listen to this, they'll know I'm being horrible. That said, it's the truth. It's a crappy compressor. What went wrong? Some idiot didn't install it properly, or they sized it badly, or they chose the wrong design. And that's all it is.
So this is very much like
that's what you need to learn.
You're a repairman almost.
Here's something. It's just that's the truth. It's like your own car. The car runs, but you don't know how it was made, and you just figure out. Okay, you know what? You need gas. If gas is not working, check the filter, check the spark plug. You just learn a few fundamentals. Just to keep it going.
Yeah.
You don't need to know the design of everything, but you've got to keep it going.
Yeah. That's why they gave you the company car. They didn't want you focusing on fixing a car. They want you to make sure your focus and attention was on the distillery.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's
So
how we roll.
At what point in your career did well, maybe I'm assuming too much. Is that the essence of the job throughout your whole career,
Well,
even as
that's
you
what you have to
transition to becoming master distiller, or at some point?
That's how you start. You start
Yeah.
by making sure the first thing is let's keep the rum running.
Keep the lights on.
Keep the lights on. Once the lights are on, you figure that out. And then they start to harass you about this, the quality issues. I did not really have to do much of that, but because we were on a relatively simple, manageable process, not getting too complicated. And slowly but surely, as you kept the rum flowing, then somebody will say, okay, we have a quality issue. And you didn't really interfere. The guys who knew about quality issues would then bring it up.
Okay.
And then you start to think, well, okay, you're beginning to understand the actual distillation process. And in some cases, this is where your superior knowledge might come into it. It's running, yeah, but is it running well? Cooling down enough? That type of thing is something that requires a slightly different knowledge set. And you start to understand that bit. You get a complaint about a quality and you start to think, quality is an issue. Where should I look for a solution to that problem? Enough steam. We're not taking off enough byproduct. The fermentation is nasty. It's producing nasty stuff. And slowly but surely, you need to be concerned about that. And as a chemical engineer, you're applying some of your skills, some of your understanding of the process of fermentation and distillation to solve those kind of problems. Takes time.
So it's like layers, essentially. Yeah. It's like your first layer is make sure things are running. Your second layer, then you start to build in more of the understanding of the quality of what you're doing and how those things.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
And you begin to need to contribute to that particular solution issues, manpower problems.
And over time, as you're going through your career, you're layering on these new skills, you're advancing through the company and that sort of thing. The direction of the company is also changing at various times. You mentioned the era of making a lot of.
I spent a lot of bulk rum.
Mm-hmm.
The local rum market was not demanding anything too extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
I got in smack in the middle of the Bacardi era. And this is it's a question of turning out rum for Bacardi's quality, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So
there's
basically,
a boat coming.
Bacardi,
5 million liters.
Bacardi says we can't make enough rum to keep up with our own demands, and so they come to Angostura and say, "Can you help us?"
No. There is a trade arrangement between ex-European colonies and European former colonizers who feel really badly that they, strip the islands of their wealth,
right,
and feel badly about it. So you know what? Okay, bring your rum into the Europe duty free. The United States doesn't enjoy that particular. And if you're making your rum in Puerto Rico or somewhere like that, and you want to send it to the UK, it attracts duties. If you send it from a former colony, it does not attract duties. So that was the name of the game.
Wow.
It's just where it comes from. So they come to Trinidad. It's wonderful how you do business. Our boss meets their boss. Hey, look at that. This is a possibility. There's a bit of a handshake.
Mm-hmm.
They come down here and they figure it out. And that's why Angostura buys Fernandez, because, we need more than you guys can make. And they help us build our second distillery, the first expansion after the original 1947 still. This is our first expansion. And, whereas the distillery might have run maybe eight months a year, we need to crank it up every single day of the week. And in fact, we need to help you build a bigger distillery. And all of this is because it makes sense to make so-called Bacardi rum right here in Trinidad. And, we were in sync as far as production dynamics were concerned. It was just a question of getting Bacardi yeast and understanding Bacardi quality matters.
Got it.
They send the bloke here, we set him up with a lab and stuff and so on and so forth. And initially it was the complete blend that we would ship out. And then bit by bit, the logistics changed and we were sending mostly bulk spirits to the UK and so on and so forth. And it was a wonderful business. Angostura took it with both hands and made a fair amount of money from it, I would think.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask, and I think this kind of intersects with that a little bit, but a lot of times we talk about styles of rum around the world, right? And when people are talking about Caribbean rum, a lot of times, or even a little bit beyond the Caribbean too, a lot of times it gets condensed down to this kind of colonization model of English style rum, Spanish style rum, French style rum, right? And we always talk about how that's not really, the most accurate way of categorizing rum. And I think Trinidad is a really good example of that because, it's someone might look at it and think English speaking country must be an English style rum, right? But if you look at the Angostura production process, it's much closer to, I think, in other interviews you described as being maybe comparable to Puerto Rico a little bit in the style, which would make sense given this Bacardi connection. But how do you kind of describe the style of the rums of Angostura or maybe Trinidad more broadly if you think there are connections between what Angostura does and what other distilleries there throughout the course of its history have done?
Well, in the early days, I happened to see some of the work that was done before Angostura, or as they were planning to build their distillery. Now, Angostura is fortunate, I suppose you will say, that the company was never in the sugar industry.
Mm-hmm.
There were no legacy stills, either pot stills or so-called coffee stills.
Right.
There were no legacy stills. We understood this dynamic, and Mr. Gatlip and Mr. Gomez, they all understood this. And at the time of making decisions about how Angostura rum would be, they sort of looked around and started to say, well, what are we going to do? What is Angostura going to do as far as to make a rum that's a little different from anything else in the Caribbean? The Jamaicans were big on their pot stills, and there was no way we were going to really include pot stills in our rum.
Mm.
Cane juice was never going to be it, of course. It was always going to be molasses.
Mm-hmm.
There was a personal distaste for a certain note that's very common coming out of so-called coffee stills.
Mm.
And there was a greater desire to make a rum that was a little more refined, if you will, but not quite as bland as a Bacardi rum.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that name out there because, well, when you look at their rums, the common thread anyway is that they were busy trying to compete with vodka. And if you're competing with vodka, it means, you're a race to the bottom, if you will.
Right.
As far as taste is concerned.
You want it to be
that's
something
just my personal opinion.
You want it to be something that no one can taste in the drink, right?
Almost. But we then settled in this sort of a mid ground. And if you wanted to look at it, it does have some Bacardi heritage, if you will,
mm-hmm.
in that the Bacardi style is basically a blend of a aguardiente and a redistillado.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, how do you create this aguardiente and redistillado? What are the fundamentals of those two elements that will be the cornerstones of your rum? And that was definitely, if you look at the history, it's a very, very Cuban thing.
Mm-hmm.
Aguardiente and redistillado.
Which is essentially like a lighter rum and a heavier rum, right?
Exactly. And they have their ways of doing it and blending. So Angostura sort of figured, well, and then the quality of redistillado is something to be looked at, and the quality quality of your aguardiente is something to be looked at. So that's how we designed our spirits. To call it one or the other is a little difficult to say. It's just not exactly an advancement on distilling technology, if you will, but it is creating a taste profile by distilling in a manner which yields spirits that have that quality that you're looking for. Something that nothing wrong with Jamaican rum, they're fine. Nothing wrong with your standard sort of coffee still rum. Some people still think that's really, anything beyond the coffee still is not rum. I think anything beyond the coffee still is not rum. I'm not sure I go that far, but there you go.
Yeah. I was going to say that kind of carries into the education piece a little bit we talked about earlier. And also, all of this is coming together because I think even still today, a lot of even rum enthusiasts out there seem to have a perception that pure column still rums just simply can't provide a flavorful end product like a pot still can. And, I bet you have a lot to say about that. And some of you've already said, but I would love to hear more about why that is wrong.
Well, I ran into a lot of difficulties. Well, not a lot of difficulties, but the odd little slap on the wrist because I'm Caribbean, and to me, as far as I'm concerned, it all helps rum. I think the diversity of rum is what really makes it a fascinating beverage, and particularly within the Caribbean. And the only thing I have nothing wrong with other people's rums. But I'm a Caribbean kind of guy, and I'm thinking, yeah, if you want real rum, come to the Caribbean, okay? I'll throw in some Central Americans, but just grudgingly so. Grudgingly so.
Yeah.
Come to the Caribbean, and you'll find something that you'll like, and you'll enjoy the diversity of rum, and everybody will be able to blend you a cocktail that shows off the best of their rums, and at the upper end, if they have the right blenders, they can come up with something that's really enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of taste. And we think we found our little place in that whole mix, with certainly over the last sort of 30, 25 years, with this sort of change of mindset that says we are creating great spirits, and these are liquids to be respected like any other liquid.
Well, we're going to push forward through your career. I have a specific question. You're now there roughly 20 years ish, and there's something specific I wanted to ask you about. There was a Vendome hybrid still that I know was purchased by Angostura in the 2000s, and then it was later sold to St. Lucia Distillers. I don't know much about this story, but I wanted to ask, since you were there, how involved were you in that investment? And can you tell us, what were the goals around that? Why it ultimately didn't stick around? Anything to talk about with that?
Well, it's difficult to say, but yeah, the name of the game was, a whole spurt of growth. We were doing this, and the idea was, could we do something different? What could we do that was different? And it wasn't our first stab at a pot still.
Oh, really?
No, it wasn't. Okay. Let's not call it a pot still. But we did have a still which was aimed at creating something different from the standard light rum and heavy rum that we were making. Maybe perhaps a heavier rum. And I'm guessing that the results of that experiment didn't meet standards, weren't appreciated, were not what they were looking for. So this, to be honest, was the second attempt at that. But again, the results were not, and for a variety of reasons, and primarily because I think we probably didn't give it enough of a go. There was a manpower issue, and we were deep in Bacardi time at that point in time, and you really couldn't find anyone who was willing to put up with what was required to run this operation. And I'm going to say this out loud, but the local customs environment is not very friendly to experimentation. Keep such a close eye on every single liter of spirit.
Really?
That if you're doing it as an experimentation, it's a whole new bunch of books and
red tape.
Stuff just to keep an eye on this thing, and it was proving to be troublesome in a manner which made it difficult to be really on a greater scale, very creative, and experimentation just wasn't going to work very well. You go to some of the other islands, and they really don't fuss too much with what you do. As soon as it leaves here, just pay your tax.
Yeah.
Or they have a clear paradigm where you whatever you make, you put in there. That's it. And if you're moving it out there, you pay your tax. Simple as that. You don't have to keep a bunch of books and all sorts of things and on it goes. And I just think that the logistics of handling it within our environment proved a little too much of a nuisance. And I think St. Lucia, the environment in St. Lucia was far more conducive to, just doing what the hell you want. And as long as it's in the warehouse there, they're not going to fuss.
Yeah. Well, you can look at their output, and it does seem like they have a friendly environment for experimentation because, tons of different stills, cane juice, molasses, doing all kinds of stuff.
All sorts of things, yeah. And in Trinidad, I mean, when you buy X amount of molasses, they will tell you they're expecting Y amount of alcohol, and if you don't get it, let's know what's happening.
Interesting.
And if you then switch to cane juice, which they're not accustomed to using, you're going to have to show them, okay, we have this amount of cane juice, and therefore we expect to yield this amount of alcohol. And if that doesn't happen, they want to know where it went.
Wow.
And they've got all their formulas. Yeah. Oh, they've got all their formulas based on molasses and all sorts of things that they're very, very accustomed to. And Angostura Rum, those customs, it was a real nuisance. We actually had to help them develop the first computerized ledgers for our production at a distillery. Yeah.
Wow.
So because I couldn't possibly explain to you how tedious the old-fashioned, very British way of monitoring your whole alcohol production situation is, and making sure every single liter was accounted for at every single movement. I mean, we have two warehouses on the same compound, and you would require an officer in one and an officer in another.
Wow.
And it got really complicated, and we were very hard. I must admit, slowly but surely they came around, but there was a point beyond which they would not go. And so, yeah, I must admit, the excise environment was not conducive to, experimentation and stuff like that. So just sold it and moved on.
Have you had a chance to taste any of the output of that still since it's been at St. Lucia Distillers?
It's not by itself. It's all in their different blends, and good on them. Angostura actually bought St. Lucia Distillers for a while there,
right.
and it was ours. A long story. That gets complicated.
Something you said earlier stuck out to me. You said, if, I think there were like 4 ifs in there. If you have a good blender, then some really good things can happen. I wanted to ask you, what is collaboration, or is there much collaboration between a master distiller such as yourself and the person in the master blender role? Is there a lot of communication? Are you working together, or is it more like I make sure the rum is made properly, she takes it and creates something amazing out of all of them? What does it look like?
Well, this happened once Angostura. Okay, as the Bacardi era. Okay, let's change that. As the global trading paradigms began to change, you will really face a situation where, and not only that, Bacardi became quite the monster. as you well know.
Oh yeah.
And they run their organization. I mean, the early Bacardi was really just like an Angostura, only a lot bigger.
Yeah.
They focused on rum, very much a family-run business, all that sort of thing. But then Bacardi just blew up.
Growth, expansion. Yeah.
All sorts of different things went on. And anyhow, they no longer needed spirits from Angostura. So Angostura then turned inwards. And not only that, part of the change of the trading environments meant that the way that the colonizers assuaged their guilt had to change as well. So it moved from duty-free entry into a sort of, okay, here what we'll do for you. We will assist with investment in various aspects of rum not just rum. There were other products that also faced the wrath of the WTO rules based on, just because you're a colony doesn't mean you're supposed to get a break.
Right.
Various agreements throughout the world had to change. So they assisted with some investment in the Caribbean through the West Indian Rum and Spirit Producers Association. They worked with all the environmental, education, marketing, a couple other things that they assisted with us and the goal was to put us in a position to market bottled product into Europe rather than bulk product. And well, we took advantage of that. And when Angostura had this opportunity to get into an international market, their choice was to, rather than compete at the lowest level of the rum business, try to go at a premium level. Say, hey folks, yeah, sure, anybody can make cheap and nasty stuff. People with our heritage make something better, and it's worth it. And in order to really bring some sort of reality to that, there was a lot more cooperation between the blenders and the distillers and agents. So let's get together and really put together something that's a little different, that will be a little different on the other end.
Yeah.
So that's where, with these aged products, you get a little bit more cooperation between myself and this is the team that sort of came together to try to really work on everything that we do at the distillery, or did at the distillery, to create something that would definitely stand out as a rum worthy of the name or the category premium.
So when you make that decision, what does that change for you as a distiller? Do you start saying, okay, we need to change some of the rums we're making? Does it mean we need to make more of certain types of rum? What is that?
Yeah, a lot of that. The rums don't change vastly. You pay more attention to quality, but definitely your aging, your casking and aging, which also fell under the distillery's purview, takes definitely a different look.
Okay.
Most of what happens, what you make and what you age. The distillery doesn't change a lot. Now, we do have some products which are made, at least one most recently, actually two, which we included rums that were made in our Caribbean islands. But next year in Trinidad, you must try a symphony, which is not just Trinidad rum, but the rums that were made in other islands, again, just to add a different wrinkle to the whole thing. And if you've got a lot of money, you can get some Zenith, or, sorry, you're American, so it'll be Zenith.
Zenith, yeah.
It'll be Zenith.
Yeah, I like how comfortable you're making us feel. You've learned all the American pronunciations. It's
Yeah, no, we marketers, nothing but if not flexible. Know your audience. No, but that's the other part that comes in when you get into the international market. And a lot of the credit, not all, quite a bit of the credit goes to Lawrence Dupre, who really loved Angostura, not only primarily from a brand perspective. He just thought that Angostura bitters is just awesome product, perfect. That's why we didn't make an extension until 183 years later. It was just too good. How could we do anything better? It did everything, Moving on. But Lawrence really had a strong feeling about the brand and thought that we were not fully exploiting the full capability of that name Angostura. In the early days, even in Trinidad, none of the rums actually carried the name Angostura. So Angostura made, white oak, old oak gold, and different brands, like I say, Silver Circle, blah, 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 didn't actually carry Angostura on it. And for many years, the idea was that the two needed to be separate.
Right.
Needed to be separate. And it was a bit of a, really a break from no, he wasn't the first, but he definitely internationally decided that any international rum that went out there had to carry the name Angostura. There was an Angostura in Trinidad we did try eventually. And this is before Lawrence, or another one of our marketing guys thought, well, let's give that a swing. Let's put Angostura on it. Let's see if that can really help us. And it was a sort of a slightly more premium white rum that we put Angostura on. It didn't happen. It didn't work for us here. But going internationally, definitely we were going to use Angostura.
It's a way of having the foot in the door with people already.
Exactly. Name recognition, if nothing else.
Of course. Well, and we know that there's a lot of quality behind the product there as well. And Will and I, we love a lot of the higher strength independent bottling releases sometimes. Well, not sometimes, all the time, really. I love it. And we know that many of those are no sugar added, if not all of them. I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit about that since we're talking about the Angostura label. There are a line of premium rums there that hardcore geeks like us, we may understand that there's some added sugar, or at least it feels like there might have been some added sugar there. I wanted to ask, during your time there, was that something that was acknowledged and as part of the process for releasing a rum? And if so, to what extent has the view on that changed in recent years?
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm really, it'll be wrong of me to discuss blending, because really it's not my forte, not my thing. I didn't really get involved. But when it left me, there was no sugar in
it. Good answer.
But my point is this: that my position in this is really always that this whole concept, again, of who is telling you what rum is. Somebody is telling you what rum is what your rum is, and don't let that happen. Don't let that happen. You are once again being dictated to. This is what we make. You either like it or you don't. Mm-hmm. Don't tell me it's not good. Don't do that. Don't do that. So that whereas I can appreciate that there is a whole bunch of people who think rum shouldn't have any sugar added, particularly if it's cane sugar or what have you. Well, okay, no problem. But don't tell me that I can't make this, and for want of a better phrase, call it Trinidad rum. And this is how we make it. Now, we may choose also to follow something different. We may decide, okay, fine. To be in your market, we need to make something of this nature. Fine. And we may decide to go that way. But if this is how I make it, don't tell me it's wrong or bad or whatever. This is how we make it. And get over it. Don't be lording on anybody about what is what and what is not what. I think we'll choose our ways and we'll take it from there.
It's because we talk to people all over the rum landscape who have a variety of opinions on this. And you do run into people who say, who are very absolutist in the nature of if rum has anything added, it's not rum, it's whatever. And then you also have people who say, you can do what you want within the confines of whatever rules your country has, but just, if there's something added, put it on the label, inform us.
Put it on the label,
that kind of
put it
thing.
on the label. Call it Trinidad rum or whatever you call it, Barbadian rum or Guyanese rum or whatever it is, and accept it for what it is. And either you like it or you don't like it. And we as manufacturers will create something that, maybe you will like, maybe you won't like. But just know that we have, my position is that we have full control of whatever we make, and you have full control with whatever you decide to put in your mouth.
Well, I think the common motto that a lot of rum enthusiasts adopt is drink what you like, but know what you drink. Is that it, John? I always get I get these sayings confused.
Something like that. That's wonderful. That's
pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's something like that.
Perfect. And here, the funny part about it is that a lot of one, from my opinion, one particular brand that really did so well. In many ways, it led the way, and so the whole concept of the potential of a premium rum product, premium aged product, everybody loved it, and it was being sold. Nobody was arguing, is it rum or is it not rum? Is it this or is it? They just loved it. Leave it alone. Then all of a sudden, everyone turns on you and decides, oh, no, man, that's not good. That's not right. And then they get in your head and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, they're right. This is not good. Even though it was doing so well. And then you turn on it because somebody gets in your head and tells you shouldn't like it. Because I don't know why. That's not proper, in my opinion. That's unfortunate and shouldn't happen. That really shouldn't happen. And it's unfortunate. That said, if you choose as a manufacturer to set different, come up with a different blend, whatever it is you like, and whatever it is, if your market is changing and this is what they want to do, and you want to try and keep up with it, go for it. Ultimately, this is my position. You will make what people want to drink. Okay. I got up in a meeting once, and it's terrible of me, but it's true. We're in the business to make money, not make rum. We want to make money. We make money by making rum that people will buy. Okay, so let's make money. Let's make rum that people will buy. Then we'll be fine. It's not making rum for me or for as many people as possible that they will buy. And that's what we're after.
That's an interesting position because it's almost circular, because then you go back to, then you have people out there that believe rum should be a certain way, and they're going to try to change other people's minds so that more of that rum is going to be purchased. And then you turn make more of that rum. And so it's this weird kind of interesting, ecosystem.
At the end of the day, we are satisfying a customer. At the end of the day, we are satisfying customer, not ourselves.
Well, I think it's, one thing we're seeing more and more is more companies don't necessarily always change what they do, but they'll maybe be more open about what they're doing so consumers have awareness of what's going in the bottle and can then make their own decisions. So that's personally what I like to see more from 100%. Producers is...
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. If added sugar is part of your rum making tradition, within your culture, your country, that's permissible, put it in there. But it's nice to be able to know when I buy it if that's part of it or not.
Well, yeah, just say so. And the funny thing is, if you liked it before you knew,
No, it's a good point. Yeah. My wife sometimes calls me a rum snob. I'm not going to lie to you, John, because, she does, because she says sometimes I'll gravitate away from some of those sugar-added products just because that's my personal palate, though, John, to your point. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of different types of palates, and there are good rums out there that have only small, what I would consider to be small quantities. I would just like to know. Right. Like we were saying. Well, and then we can make our decision.
Your palate knows. You taste it.
That's true.
You will not be fooled. Yeah. If you're a big rum geek and you know what's going on, you know who is who and who is doing what. let's not fool ourselves. It's just some sort of, I don't know, some sort of, I'm not sure. My English on occasions escapes me here. I need a thesaurus, but there's a reverse dictionary. It's there's a word for it, I'm sure, but I'm not that good at English. I don't have those highfalutin words that you only see on spelling bees.
I think you've showcased a very impressive vocabulary so far.
I would agree.
It's a question of somehow once again trying to, I don't know why do you do that? It's been rum's history. Rum's history has been just used when convenient. If you go way back into rum and excluded wherever possible, that's rum's history. The Spaniards, were so afraid of rum. They didn't want it to be coming across to Spain at all. We don't want it there at all. The only reason some of them got into rum is if there was a crop failure in their grapes and they couldn't get brandy, and say, okay, we begrudgingly have some rum. And you wonderful Americans loved rum until patriotism comes across, and you've got all this bloody corn, and now you are forced to drink that.
It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, isn't it?
Drink bourbon. I mean, it's like you had a lot of fun with rum back in the day.
We're trying to bring it back, John. That's part of what we're trying to do.
Won and lost with rum, so it's this part of it. It's a funny old planet.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a little bit more because I know, people will be hearing about someone who spent so much time working in Trinidad rum. It's hard to talk about Trinidad rum with rum geeks without also talking about Caroni. And I know you got into the rum business in the 80s, so you were able to see a good portion of the life of the Caroni distillery firsthand. And I wanted to ask, taking a long view of this, what was it like to see Caroni go from what it was, in its heyday, to then going out of business, and then to becoming this crazy sought after, uber expensive on the secondary market rum that's sort of prized by connoisseurs all over the world. I want to say it came as a surprise, maybe that was the trajectory for that rum. But what was it like for you to watch that?
Well, it is all sorts of that thing. That situation is crazy, and it goes back at the end of the day to marketing. It's all a wonderful marketing story. Every country has a lost distillery or a shut distillery with rare spirits that are sold, and you can go back in history and look around and see the odd blender, and because it would end up in blends of so-called navy rums, would contain whoever was a blender at that time would mix rums from different parts of the Caribbean and come up with a navy and Caroni. And it's you've got to love marketing people. You just got to love them. Two problems. Nothing wrong with Caroni's product. And one of the things that you are going to, certainly from my point of view, whenever I am enjoying a spirit or something like that, I love to know about it. I love to understand its history, where it came from. Yeah. That to me is part of the enjoying the beverage. So that Caroni's story is amazing. And it's one of those old stories. And the rums, quality-wise, it's hard for me to really, because I didn't drink a lot of Caroni rums, and I couldn't really say. But obviously, back in the day, they made some interesting spirits. And again, coming from the sugar industry, it's an amalgamation of all sorts of people coming together at some point in time. And the final entity, which was Tate and Lyle, was really the end of a long tail of all sorts of bits and pieces.
Right.
And here it is ending up in this one distillery, and it's bits and pieces from all over. And they turn out something which is obviously going to be quite unique. And one thing I have discovered at Angostura, the early distillers that I met at Angostura had this amazingly intuitive knowledge of distilling.
Yeah.
No, I'm this sharp chemical engineer, not sharp. I'm this chemical engineer with all this wonderful knowledge. I know all about, what do you call them? Charts and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Volatility. I know they didn't know that, but they knew how to make rum.
Yeah.
Phase diagrams. Forget about it. They knew how to make rum. And they had their own way of doing things. And Caroni would, and you really had to depend on, again, a lot of loyalty, a lot of passing one from guy to the next, for how they would make the rums. And if you got one part of the still from here, another part of the still from there, it took quite some skill set to put together the rums. Wonderful story, interesting products, and in there, and this is my particular take on the matter. Is in there they've got some, by design or by happenstance, some very interesting liquids.
Yeah. And I know you don't want to speak too much on the blending side. You made the rum, so there's a long and winding story of what happened with all the Caroni rum after the distillery shut down. We do know some of it, a large portion of it was purchased by Angostura, and there's been all kinds of speculation ever since then of people saying like, in the 1824 or in the 1787, I swear I taste a little bit of Caroni, that kind of thing. Obviously the exact blend components can't be revealed. Obviously you already said you were not a blender, so maybe not privy to everything, but can you tell us whether any Caroni rum ever found its way into Angostura branded rums over the years?
Well, I can say with certainty, of course, not in any of our regular SKUs.
Mm-hmm.
In some of our limited editions, however. Limited edition. So, for instance, Zenith limited edition.
Zenith
definitely has Caroni in it.
Okay.
Definitely. There was another one that will remain nameless, which there's a touch of Caroni in it. And we did that because it was a rum that really was representing Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
And I don't think I'll probably get into trouble for saying this, but back in about what was it? What was that? 2012? Probably 2012 or somewhere. Probably 2012. Angostura put out a product called Legacy, which at the time was the most expensive rum in the world.
Wow. How much are we talking?
That was $25,000 for a half liter.
Wow.
A half liter crystal decanter by Asprey. I couldn't remember that the other day. By Asprey of London, jewelers to His Majesty. Well, not His Majesty the King, but it was jewelers to Prince Charles at the time, and it was really quite unique. And that was part of the whole let's elevate rum thing. That. Yes, there is such a thing as a rum that costs you $25,000 a bottle. Or sorry, a decanter, a crystal decanter.
Can't call it a bottle.
We made 20 of those, and they all sold.
Wow.
At a couple at auction, but there are private individuals who have this decanter of Legacy in their portfolio, and that whole idea that rums are worth that. And we're not talking some ancient rum that, you find that it's really because, it's a rare bottle, but we can create a rum that is worth easily. And I tell people it was cheaper twice the price. That Legacy. It was an amazing. It was a brilliant rum. Brilliant rum. And for us at the time, it was created really as part of the celebration of Trinidad and Tobago's 50th anniversary of independence or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was our contribution to sort of, proving that as an island, we are, rising.
Yeah.
And are capable of great stuff. And it was a wonderful product. And all the rums not only was it, but all the molasses, no more. We have no more rum industry in Trinidad. All the molasses that made those rums was Trinidad molasses.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
And that rarefied it even more.
Yeah, for sure.
That rarefied it even more. And that's the point. This is literally a little bit of history that you'll never ever get back again.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to ask you one more thing. I know we've kept you long. I want to ask you one more question before we move to our final segment of the show. We were chatting on the phone before we did the interview a few weeks back, kind of talking about it. And one of the things you said to me that stood out was that you got to be in a lot of rooms where important things happened in your career.
Different things happened. Yeah,
different things. When you look back on it, are there any particular moments in particular rooms that stand out as being particularly special or noteworthy or memorable in some way?
It's just interesting directions. Well, I was really happy when the whole premium product thing came up. We were doing a few experimentations. That was kind of interesting to be involved in that. The whole 10 cane thing was just such a fascinating paradigm.
Yeah, it's Trinidad's other lost distillery, right?
That's right. It's all over the world, and there may be one or two bottles or one or two limousine casks of the rum out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was again. There's a uniquely fascinating bit of rum history that I'm sure there's lots of it out there, but that was just a fascinating dynamic to watch unfold. Really weird.
Yeah.
For the best part, with those two are the two that I can mention.
Okay. Yeah. So some of them were secret rooms.
Well, not exactly, but let's not complicate things.
All right.
It wasn't that spectacular. I mean, I wasn't really in the serious parts, but those are the ones that I happened to be part of that I thought was quite interesting.
All right. Well, I know we've been all over the place. We have one final destination to go in this conversation, and that is our special rapid fire segment, a tradition on the Rumcast. Optional, but we'll ask you if you're up for it.
Well, I'll try to answer them as honestly as I practically can.
That's the spirit. John, do you want to tell John about this segment?
Yeah, I'll tell him. So essentially what this is very short answer segment. I'm going to give you kind of a this or that type of question, or it'll be just a question looking for a very brief answer, as brief as you can give, so that we can get through as many of these questions, or hopefully all of them, in the span of roughly 60 seconds.
Very roughly.
You Americans and your game show stuff.
Basically.
We have to, it's marketing. We have to have a gimmick to keep the people coming back.
Those marketing guys, one of which is me, I guess. So we'll try to get through as many of these. There's no right or wrong answers to this. It's just whatever you want to come out with. Some of them might be more serious. Some of them might be pretty silly. So we'll see what happens.
Okay.
All right. I've got 60 seconds and go.
Okay. Neat or on the rocks?
Both.
We'll accept both.
John's already got the premise of I don't care about the rules. Both.
But
column,
no mixers.
Ooh. Okay, no mixers. Got it. Column, pot, or blend?
Blend.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Aged or unaged?
Oh, I'm an aged guy.
Makes sense. And I think I know the answer to this one, but molasses or cane juice?
Oh, molasses. That said, I recently had something from Guadeloupe that almost turned me.
Yeah, those Guadeloupe rums are good.
Mm-hmm. It's true. This might be a faux pas, but I'm going to ask, Trinidad or Tobago? You're like, no, both.
Well, it's Trinidad and Tobago, and I would love to make rum and Tobago.
There is no splitting them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't Tobago rum. I don't know it. Not legal stuff, anyway.
Okay. You have an incredible speaking voice. I want to know: do you secretly host a late night R&B or smooth jazz radio program by chance?
No, I do not. No.
I mean, you really should. You should look into it. It would be fantastic. It would have many people listening. Your favorite distillery of all time that's not located in Trinidad?
Favorite distillery of all time not located in Trinidad. Just for the history and the craziness that went on there, It's just the weirdest place I've ever been to. Hamden.
I knew that would
in
be the
Jamaica.
answer.
Nice. Good answer. Okay.
Craziest distillery I ever went to.
Nice. We'll have to dig into that another time. Is it true? I heard a rumor. Is it true that Angostura is planning a whole series to go with their bitters? It's going to be Angostura Sweets, Angostura Sours, Angostura Salts, and Angostura Savories.
Nope. I have no idea. We've tried, savories and stuff like that. But no, it's just what I know we're trying to. I know what we're trying to do is develop sustainable or local flavors. We work with the cocoa already, and the orange is not really honest, but the cocoa is the direction we're going. Honest, true, balanced, sustainable flavors.
I just love that you're taking that question seriously, so that was great. And finally, your full name I've seen is John P. Georges, which to me, it might be Paul. I don't know. I'm just thinking it's Paul. I don't know. But if it is, that's John Paul Georges, which begs the question, was your father's name Ringo? Or maybe your brother?
No, my father's name was Philip with one L.
Okay.
Oh, that's time, by the way. That must be where the P comes from.
That's the P, the Philip.
Yeah, with one L.
Right.
I was hoping it would be Paul because I'm a Paul middle name person, also after my father. So, well, okay, we're done, but I have to hear what's the craziest thing you saw at Hampden?
Oh, come on. The muck pit, of course.
The muck pit, of course.
And the muck pit and where they generate their yeast.
Uh-huh.
There's this big old tub. And I don't know what was in there, but everything bar the kitchen sink. It was just fascinating. But it turned out some interesting liquid. And they took it very, very seriously.
Absolutely.
Very, very. It's just a fascinating place. And that's my understanding. The good old the gentleman Ray and nephew, Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Ray just got Jamaicans to hang on to pot stills for as long as possible. Had this idea that somehow going continuous was either something beyond them or something he just didn't want to do. And probably he alone single-handedly has really established this Jamaican pot still thing.
Wow.
And the whole dynamic of that whole fiesta thing. And it's a fascinating development, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, John Georges, thank you so much for sharing your evening before your big your journey across the world, preaching the good word of rum. We really appreciate it.
Not just rum, Angostura rum.
Angostura rum, yes,
that's
not
right.
just rum. Angostura rum, Caribbean rum.
And the reason why we are really at the top of our game is that we have, in my opinion, over the years, just developed the best blenders. Who couldn't really work without the best distillers, but
great.
There you go.
Are they like the mechanical engineers to the chemical engineers? Is that no?
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. We're all good.
All right. Well, John, thanks again for spending time with us. It was great to hear more about your career, learn a lot about the history of Angostura and Trinidad rum. Fascinating stuff. So we really appreciate you stopping by. Thanks again.
You're most welcome. You take care, Will. John, there you go. Good name.
That's a good name. That's right.
And you never know, one of these days. IRL.
One of these days. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Rumcast. It was great to have you along for the ride with us. And if you'd like to get more Rumcast, you can go to patreon.com/rumcast. That's patreon.com/rumcast. We're doing bonus episodes, happy hours. You know, John, something that occurred to me actually just before we started recording this little intro outro segment was maybe, it's been a long time since I've really tasted the core Angostura line. I don't know. Maybe we should taste through that as a bonus episode or something. I think you and I have really gravitated toward the independent bottling releases that we know have no added sugar over the years, including that amazing Velier Flag Series release, which we just recently had the opportunity to sample again. I think both of us missed out on bottles for that because there were so few of them. That was I might have picked that as my rum of the year. It was something I that rum is an absolute stunner. Anyway, it's been forever since I've revisited the core Angostura line. Maybe we should do that at some point for a bonus episode. But anyway, if you want to join along for the ride for that, we're doing bonus episodes, happy hours. We have the Discord community, as I mentioned earlier. You can hop in and join us there. Always fun conversations going on. And, we'd love to know what rums you're drinking headed into this summer. I'm sitting here as we record this. I made a nice little, I guess this is a Chairman's Reserve highball, maybe. Something I like. Shh, don't tell, I'm telling everyone now, but something I'm a little partial to sometimes in restaurants is if they make a good Japanese highball, which is Japanese whiskey and just good quality soda water with like a citrus twist. Okay. I really like that sometimes in restaurants. Particularly, there's some, if you're eating Asian cuisine, sometimes they have that on the menu. It's a nice pairing. Anyway, I did the rum version of that with Chairman's Reserve Legacy, and Topo Chico is my soda water of choice there. So, or sparkling water, I should say. I always get the technical terms confused there. Anyway, it's a great drink heading into the summer. It's cool, it's light, refreshing. It's got that pop from the carbonation. Topo Chico has that really like higher level of carbonation that I really like. So anyway, it's great stuff. What are you drinking? Send us an email, host@rumcast.com. That's HOST@rumcast.com. Or you can find us on social media. Send us a comment, a DM, a reply, all sorts of things. John, where can they find us?
We are at the Rumcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now, drumroll, Threads. I finally gave in.
I did not know we were on Threads.
It's a surprise to you and me. I accidentally somehow got onto Threads today.
Just wait until I start the Rumcast TikTok account. It's going to blow your mind.
I'm waiting for your dance. It's going to be the first dance to put on there. So we're not on TikTok yet. Will, that's in your category there. Okay. But we did join Threads, so we'll see how that works. We've been complaining about Twitter/X forever. We're still on it, but maybe Threads is going to take over a little bit. We'll see.
The future, baby.
Yeah. So we're on all those platforms. You can hit us up there. You can tell us what you're drinking, like Will said. By the way, Will, I think my lazy summer cocktail right now is just one part of a rum and one part of an Amaro, and put them together, and it is beautiful. I don't know what to call it. We've talked about this before, but
a Romaro.
Exactly. It should be a Romaro. So I love it. And there's different Amaros you compare with different rums. Armadur from the Rum Revival recently did something similar, but in shot form.
That's a great video.
Yeah. So, I tend to just sip it more than shoot it, but they're really, really nice. So that's my lazy summer cocktail, revisiting a concept we had, a couple years ago now, I think.
That was last summer. That wasn't
last summer?
Yeah, that wasn't that far in the past.
Feels like forever. Anyways, so long story short, tell us what you're drinking, what's your summer lazy cocktail, or just what rum you're drinking, and hit us up on the new Threads. Find us there and let us know. So, Will, with that, I'm looking forward to some future episodes. You know what's coming soon. You know what's right around the corner.
Ooh, I know you're thinking about it. I mean, me, I'm just sitting back with my arms behind my head, my feet propped up, just reveling. But yeah, what's coming up?
Well, that's how the mighty fall when they don't prepare ahead of time. You prepare to fail in the next Rumcast fantasy draft, which is coming soon. So I'm already prepping. I'm researching. I'm trying to figure out how I can find the angle to just get inside and beat you to the finish line this time.
You got to come up, you got to do something different, a different strategy, just shake things up, different approach.
That's super uncomfortable for me because I feel like I should have won both other times, but
Are you trying to asterisk my titles?
Oh yeah, I did. I thought I already did that. In my head, they were both asterisked anyways.
I've got my eye on the three-peat coming up. I'm blasting the Lil Wayne, the Carter 3-peat opening track. That's what we're listening to over here, taking me right back to
the shirts just yet. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Don't pay Pat Riley his royalties for 3-peat just yet.
Right. Yeah, that man down there in Miami. I think I brought that up before our last one, and I ended up winning. So I've just got one more box to check, and then the 3-peat is on. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that'll be coming up in maybe a month and a half or so. I think August is generally fantasy draft season. So yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But in the meantime, as John said, let us know what you're drinking, what you're enjoying this summer, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.